Morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Texas NARO virtual. We never thought we'd be in this position. Could have we ever planned for this conference? But we're glad you're here. Y'all feel free to turn your cameras on. I love seeing everybody's faces. I know it's early in the morning, so if it makes you feel better, I'm barefooted in a t-shirt sitting in my backyard. So don't be scared to turn your camera on. I've done it first. So we're fortunate this morning to have Miss Patricia Wells, who is a candidate for the Senior VP for NARO on the national level. She's a beautiful lady, intelligent. We expect great things from her. Thank you for being with us, Patricia. If you want, I'll give you just a second to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we have some questions we'll ask you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Beverly. If it's okay, can I just make, when I introduce myself, one little clarification. First of all, good morning. I'm delighted to be with you, and it is morning. So I'm here at 6:35 in Oakland, California. And so I made sure I got up early and did my quiet time and did all my getting ready so I would be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for you this morning. But as you can see, it's still dark. I'm actually currently your Senior Vice President National for NARO and am a candidate for the presidency. And it's been an incredible first year because most of my interaction with all of our membership has been just like this. And like everyone here in Oakland, California, we've been going through quite a consistent transition with what's going on with our predicament of a pandemic. I'm originally from Philadelphia, so I'm definitely a big city girl, worked in Washington, D.C., and worked and was educated in Ohio. And that's where a lot of the balance comes in. It's an interesting thing. I'm a big city girl, but I actually attended an agricultural high school because I had a fierce love for animal husbandry. And so I'm an alumni of the Future Farmers of America. And I've done a lot of volunteer work in rural areas and still do a lot of work here on the West Coast with environmental concerns and animal concerns. So I'm kind of a big city girl, but I have on more than one occasion been barefoot in a t-shirt in somebody's backyard down south. So I bring, I think, to NARO someone who's had an opportunity to work in the largest of cities as well as the smallest of communities and have found hope and resilience and fortitude and just good neighbors everywhere I've gone. And I hope to, as we talk a little bit this morning about NARO and leadership and just what we're all going through as folks dedicated to affordable housing, I hope that you see some of that in me and that we develop friendships and kindredships as we see each other when we're actually able to be in the same room in the future. So Beverly, thank you for allowing me to say good morning. And I hope to see more faces as we continue on.
Yeah, I hope so too. Sorry, but I did know that you were president. It's just, sorry about that one.
That's okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about your leadership journey up to this point? Like looking back, what have you learned and experienced? What other leadership positions have you had that has led up to your desire to be the president of NARO?
Thank you. You know, it's been a journey. About 11 years ago here in Oakland, I was lucky enough to have as a mentor a woman named Chris Good. And at the time she was executive director of the Housing Authority of the County of Alameda. And she had watched me in chapter meetings where I had been attended when I started out in housing. I was economic development specialist, which means I was a person that made sure Section 3 was happening for our housing authority with our construction jobs. And then I went into community services and became a director of community services there. But when the housing authority started changing and public housing had to become asset management projects, I got in operations. That's when I met Chris. And she started having me help teach some workshops at our chapter in NARO. And I was soon graduated to being a vice president of the chapter for professional development, which is one of my passions, is trying to help folk who are starting out in the industry really shine and find their space where they can not just do great work, but enjoy it. Because I think the work that we do is very much about giving back. And at the chapter level, rose up to professional development VP at the regional level, and then was placed on that national committee under the leadership of President Betsy, if you remember back in NARO, Betsy Martins. And then I graduated I say graduated because I was appointed many times to other committees, the Housing Committee, and also I'm a BECT advisor. And so kind of a working bee, if you will. I was always on those committees where we did a lot of the detail on what it feels like to be on the ground, boots on the ground, operating public housing, going through different transitions once we got into Hope 6. So our agency did do Hope 6, and I started to learn more and more about development and what it means to be in a community, talking and working and being amongst the folks that we serve, but also then taking that learning and interacting with staff from all the elected offices. And then once in NARO with so many wonderful people from different housing authorities. So I'm definitely kind of came up quietly on my journey, and quite frankly was asked about 2 years ago to consider running for senior VP, probably because I have such a kind of almost a quilting fabric tapestry of experiences. I didn't just come in as an executive director. And I should mention, once I became senior vice president of NARO, I was also appointed as executive director for the Housing Authority of Oakland the next day. So this first year has kind of been a baptism by fire in learning how to be a servant leader and through times of change and I'm going to use the word chaos and transition, being someone that folks can look to guide and lead and represent, but also work side by side for. So servant leadership is probably what Chris would use to describe me, and hopefully is what you'll see as I take on the journey to become our president for our national organization.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your big promotion. Sounds
Yeah.
like there's some wisdom on the board there. They knew what they were doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So both in your home community, and also I know you work with Adrian and Sonny, our president, and Carl, our past president of NARO. So both on behalf of NARO and in your community, what's it been like leading during this pandemic?
I hope as I'm talking to the Texas folks, I have to say it's been humbling, because as I've watched Sonny and Adrian and Carl just seem to naturally have intuition that the first thing they wanted to do was make sure that we knew NARO was there. And from the very beginning, figuring out this world, just like Michael has, of technology, and getting us those really comfortable workshops on what it means to have to operate within COVID, what kind of new changes there were to regulations and rules, making sure that we were aware of the resources that are available to us, the funding, the waivers, the different changes in the regulations. I was humbled to watch just the passion and the dedication that our leadership had to making sure that they made us connected to what was still going on in Washington, D.C., and to give us information to make us feel calm. And isn't that kind of what leadership is? And so it's the things that I hold valuable that helped me get to my space that I saw them instantly get to. And they did it with grace, they did it with regalness, and they paid attention to rural, smaller housing authorities that didn't have the same technology. They paid attention to making sure that we were sending things out by email and hard copy if folks couldn't be on the webinars, and making sure people had links to being able to watch it if they were on older technology. So there was attention to the smaller housing authorities to make sure they got resources, but also to pull them in to make sure that we were getting the same kind of wisdom that the larger housing authorities were able to give easily. We've learned a lot from our brothers and sisters leading housing authorities in the smaller communities, because often you do so much. You don't have the larger team, so you know housing authorities and our affordable housing industry in a way those of us at larger housing authorities, I couldn't possibly understand, because I have more team members that work beside me that do different tasks. And Adrian and Sunny and Carl instantly made sure that we made those connections. So it was a great learning experience. It was, as I said, it was inspiring, and it also gave me juice. It gave me inspiration to want to rise to the same level of great leadership that they provided to us. So it's actually been, I have to tell you, inspiring even on the scary days.
Let me unmute. I muted because the dogs are getting a little crazy behind me back there. Yesterday, Sunny had the opportunity, and I want to give you the same opportunity for both our new people that we're trying to encourage to rise up as leaders, and maybe some of the people that have been around a while and they're past leaders. They've kind of found themselves in a comfortable position now of observing from the past. But what kind of words of wisdom or encouragement would you give people as far as leadership, moving up the ranks of NARO, and not, you know, we know it starts in the state, but even if they have goals of becoming leadership at national level, what kind of wisdom do you have to offer?
Thank you for that question. I mentioned that I had a mentor who put me in and assigned me a position here at the chapter level, and I was intimidated. I remember watching some of the leaders at that point in time and thinking they seem to know so much. Oh my goodness, how can I be a part of that? I was very quiet initially. And what I learned is that by asking questions and being kind of courageous to walk up to someone and just say, how did you do that? That they're just folk. And I know our legacy leaders know that we're all just folk. And what happened is there was a moment for each of us where we saw something in a room, heard a conversation that we were in for NARO, saw a space in our housing authority where we knew we were doing good work, and we wanted to give that back. I look at leadership as paying it forward, that someone believed in me and helped me along, and now it's my turn to believe in someone else. And so if I'm the quiet one who's got an interest in leadership, but a little bit nervous about joining it, let someone in leadership know that you have an interest. And for those of us in leadership, look for that shining spark in the eye. Look for that person that seems to be doing something just really well and naturally, and reach out to them, because I think that now in this situation where our younger people, our newer professionals have to do everything through Zoom, have to do everything through phone calls, we can't get the benefit of each other's energy. There are a lot of folks not even perhaps thinking about how to give back and how to lead and how to be part of the continued solution for years to come. So I'm hoping that those of us in leadership really focus on paying attention on those rising leaders coming up and give them a comfortable space, even through Zoom. Email still works, phone calls still work. For those of you where it's opening up a little bit, having coffee at a coffee shop and just sitting 6 feet away, I think reaching out and letting people understand that leadership is just a different kind of community of paying it forward and making sure that we're doing the work that all of our missions align with for affordable housing and building comfortable and welcoming communities. That leadership is just about making sure we're bringing others with us to continue the good work. So that's what I hope, is that we're looking to build the community of leadership stronger, larger, and finding those folks who want to do it and just need someone to give them the welcoming gesture that let's do it together.
A little slow unmuting here. So on that same note, people that are looking for a different career or just starting their career, maybe at a job fair or a job search or some opportunity that they're unsure what career path they want to take, what advice would you have for people to have them to consider looking at the world we live in, at the world of affordable housing? What would you say to convince them that this is a very fulfilling career to choose?
Oh, great, great. That's an interesting question that I have to ponder for, because I'm looking out my window and the sun hasn't quite started rising yet. But I often think about what gets me energized in the morning, and what makes me want to get to work. And that's where I would start for folks who aren't really sure what they want to do, and we're trying to do the recruiting. Ask the question, what is it you want to do? How much do you enjoy certain types of tasks? So a person who doesn't necessarily have the courage, as we were talking about, Beverly, to talk to folks that they don't know and ask them uncomfortable questions, but they still want to do something in the community and they know housing is important. They may work better in the back of the room doing the accounting functions and looking at it as accounting to make sure we're spending our money well. If it's a person who does enjoy engagement, they could look into property management and being one of the leasers and the property managers at our public housing sites. If it's about inspiring folks who don't have a voice, our seniors, our veterans, our children, our young people who are now doing everything through Zoom, they would consider perhaps being engaged as resident coordinators and FSS coordinators to try to reach out to people, make them feel comfortable. You know, affordable housing, we often hear housing and we just think of the bricks and the mortar, the maintenance folks who have a desire to keep the community looking nice, the property managers and the leasers. But I look at what affordable housing is building community. And so when we're talking about those young folks at career fairs, and we're looking at even people that just want to change careers, perhaps they were in accounting and they want to do something more giving back, describing to them what our day is like. The fact that on a good day, you can help someone, a woman perhaps who has fear in her life because of domestic violence, and you can give her the right information to finding help. You can see that young person that you are watching as a property manager go to school regularly with the book bags and realize that might be a person for one of the scholarships that we have access to. And certainly as the baby boomers get older, realizing that there are seniors who just need someone to check in on them regularly and make sure that they're part of the community, that affordable housing, that public housing, that working for housing authorities gives you an opportunity to do any one of those roles. So I think it's about inspiring the thing that makes each of us get up in the morning and know we're being an important part of what's happening in the community every day.
Yeah, I knew you'd have a great answer because I'm off script. I'm making questions up. So Patricia hasn't had the opportunity to review these or know what I'm asking here. So this is a fun one. What has been some of the more enjoyable parts of being the VP for NARO?
Doing this, absolutely. And this one, you guys are testing me a little bit because I don't see faces. But I've been on several conferences with Michael where people just throw out questions that are ones that are not the ones you would think would be asked at a morning brew and a coffee talk. And it has gotten us into conversations that turned actually into just everyone talking about the subject at the moment. A lot of times it is about what's happening and how housing authorities are changing. Not just how we do things, but why we do things. Often sharing notes on experiences and fun stories. And being able to do that as senior VP has been inspiring. And I've learned so much. I brought back from one session just some ideas on how to engage our seniors and try to build more of a village type atmosphere. I've gotten to be inspired by folks who are just so passionate about the work they do in their different communities that then I get refired up. And actually there's been one or two times where there's been a person on a call in some of these conversations, or as before the pandemic, I was able to travel a little more, who was just frustrated frustrated. Everything wasn't all roses about what we're doing in the Housing Authority, or even in their individual job. There's been more than one time a person's asked me how should they approach a supervisor they're not getting along with, or they feel like they're just working and working every day and they haven't had a chance to rise in their own agencies or rise in NARO. And so the best part of being senior VP is connecting with the people. And then when I'm in my role and I'm representing us at when we're in Washington, D.C., or when we're doing advocacy work, or when I'm on Zoom calls with elected officials, I'm able to take all the spirit and the energy and the concerns of the folks that I meet in the conferences and represent, I'm hoping, in a way where I'm speaking on behalf of folks, no matter what kind of housing authority they come from or what role they play, from a maintenance employee to the executive director and including the commissioners. So this is the beautiful part, is it's making the connection.
Yeah. I know at some conferences when you were campaigning, you briefly told, and I hope you don't mind sharing again, but you briefly told during some of your campaign about your childhood and some of the values that your family instilled in you that makes you the person and the leader you are today. Do you mind just kind of recapping that, because it's an amazing story?
No, but thank you. So I as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Philadelphia, and I'm one of 6 children. And when I was 1.5, my mother developed multiple sclerosis. And at that time I was I was 2, and my sister had just been born. And by the time I was 3 and my sister was 1, my mother was so incapacitated, the disease ravaged her, that she ended up going to a nursing home. And so my daddy found himself with 6 kids, and we were stair-stepped. There was one about to go to the Vietnam War. We're a very big military family. One about to go to college, 2 in middle school, and then 2 toddler girls. And rather than disperse us to different family members, my daddy decided to raise us all himself. And he's a Navy veteran, so that was no small notion, because his way of caring for 2 little girls, I had some funny looking hair on more than one occasion, let me tell you. But what he taught us, because of the spirit of who my daddy was, is that we would not let adversity and let the absence of our mom take us down, but rather we became part of the solution for the community. So I grew up with my daddy being the deacon in our church that ran the food distribution center. I grew up making sure that as a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, I was responsible for mowing the lawn for the 2 senior ladies on one side of our house, the lawns, and shoveling their snow. My sister, when she got old enough, and my older brother, who was responsible for the rest of the folks on the block. So we were taught that anything that we were going to was to teach us what we were destined to do. My daddy was a fan of spiritual scripture. And so I became a fan of the scripture for such a time as this, which, if you're familiar with Queen Esther, tells you that you're in a space, you're in a time for such a time as this. And so instead of kind of letting the absence of a mom as a little girl be something that made me less than, I decided that I'd do what Daddy said, and I looked to many beautiful women in our community from all walks of life who mothered my little sister and I. My dad was head bottle washer, head cook, and head disciplinarian, and he made sure that we reached out into the community, and that has been who I am. So public service, giving back isn't something that's a t-shirt I wear. It's actually who I am, because it's how I was raised. And at each junction of my life, I had the opportunity to just give back in amazing ways, whether it was in school or in the community. And so I don't know how to not be, as my son would say, I'm the mom that if I saw a little kid walking in the mall by him or herself, I'm going to stop, get at their level, kneel down, try to get their names while my kids are getting a security guard. And actually, just last weekend, here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, we started clearing several cabins that had been unused in my faith community, so that they can be used by families who are evacuees from the fires. And so we've been doing backbreaking work, cutting down saplings and pulling weeds and everything. And so the way I was raised was that we're all here for such a time as this to give back and to be part of the answer. And hopefully you can tell by the big smile, just talking about it, it just brings me joy. And it's not always easy, and you get frustrated and folks aren't always kind, even when you're trying to help them. But at least you kind of can walk through the day understanding that our purpose is about making sure others can see light, even in the darkness of a pandemic, even when we're underfunded, even when housing isn't available that is needed. They see that we care. And that was from my childhood and from my daddy. I am a daddy's girl, so I should say that. So thank you for asking for that question. That made me happy.
Well, good. I debated it, but he sounds like a wonderful, wonderful man. So bless his heart. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
So back to a NARO related question. In Texas, we have very, very strong active committees. Our PD is very active. Member Services is always busy. Our legislative committee is always on top of things and meeting but how on the national level can Texas, what do we expect from NARO? What benefit, what value are we getting in Texas? Not just Houston, Dallas, Austin, our big housing authorities, but I have one housing authority that has 32 units. So what is NARO going to do for me and everybody?
Thank you. What we've been busy doing right now is there's going to be a change in November, and the change is going to be just a new team put together no matter who wins the election. And so what we've been working on is looking back over the past 3 years on all the legislative needs that have come up from our smaller housing authorities, our medium housing authorities, our larger housing authorities, and preparing a transition paper so that NARO's position to being available for the next administration, to help that next administration understand the affordable housing and public housing communities, what the needs are, whether, to your point, it's the smaller housing authorities of 32 units, where the executive director is trying to wear several different hats, including looking at getting more affordable housing in their community, right? And to the larger housing authorities that have to deal with different levels of politics and legislative changes. For example, here in Oakland, we're dealing with ordinances that won't let landlords do background checks. And what that means for a Section 8 program where landlords aren't quite as interested in being in that. So we're preparing kind of I call it a white paper, but it's an information packet so that when the new administration comes in, Sunny, myself, Adrian, the legislative team can take all the work from the different committees, which when you have the really strong committees like Texas does at your state level, that information is brought at national committees and all of that is included. And we start looking for where there are consistent trends, and that'll be part of this briefing and education. At the same time, then you'll see just the constant offerings that you've seen already of how we're able to get that information back into the individual communities. So you know how we're representing us and you have an opportunity for feedback. Professional development is on fire. I hope you've all seen that, where we've taken the fact that everything is virtual and literally, I think, have had more opportunities for folks, especially from communities where they can't necessarily travel as much, to be part of some great trainings on the changes in regulations, getting newer professionals geared up and getting the skill sets and getting the certifications to rise in the housing authorities where they work. And so we've had actually an increase of professional development offerings and the certifications we can now do online. So you'll see the fact that we never paused. Adrian and Sunny and leading all the rest of us leaders never had us pause. We are continuing to move forward. So hopefully what you see is the fact that your voice is being heard, but we need you to tell us through the mechanisms of going up through the committees, so we're representing everyone as much as we can. And that includes realizing that the needs and the desires and the ideas are not going to be consistent. So we're very much paying attention to what works for, say, some larger urban communities on the West Coast won't work for that same kind of housing authority on the East Coast, and the same thing for smaller housing authorities, that there are differences because we come from different communities, and being respectful of that.